Alrighty everyone, as we are just getting very close to the official release of The Mandalorian Season 3 by both Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, a lot of fans are also really looking forward to the Ahsoka Tano series that's being led by Rosario Dawson and created by Dave Filoni also. And given that, yes, they are now projecting a fall release date for the Ahsoka series, a lot of things are changing around with the Ahsoka show. They're doing a lot of things in post-production and doing all these special things with the World Between Worlds, etc. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing that we do know about when it comes to Jon, George, and Dave is that it really is all about doing things that they are truly passionate about. And as you all know, when it came to the sequel trilogy that was being led by J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, and temporarily by Colin Trevorrow, there wasn't a whole lot of passion being driven by Disney and the higher-ups and Kathleen Kennedy at the time. And now it's a different world, because now, basically, Jon and Dave have all the authority and control over the franchise, and that's why you're going to see a big night and day difference between what Star Wars was like in 2019, and even in recent years, in comparison to this year and next. So, moving on to actor Mark Hamill, he had a couple of things to say and reveal and expose about Lucasfilm as a company that isn't really all too reassuring, at least from a standpoint of when they were working on the sequels, and how they treated Mark Hamill, how they treated the overall Star Wars fandom behind closed doors. So let's get right into exactly what Mark Hamill had to say and elaborate on all of that. So, of course, with actor Mark Hamill becoming more direct and honest with the fans, he was recently able to talk more about his time working with Lucasfilm and how it has changed, and went on to reveal some unexpected things about how it was run by Kathleen Kennedy. Now further, it's noted that Mark Hamill in a recent interview went on to state the following to fans. The thing that really bothered me the most, to be honest, when I was working on The Rise of Skywalker was how I was specifically instructed by Kathy and some of the Lucasfilm creatives to not even talk about George's work on set while working on not just Episode 9, but also Episode 8. Lucasfilm did not want me giving any ideas to the cast and crew about Lucas's work, since he had so much experience working with me on the originals. It's like Kathy and everyone did not want any kind of tones of his work to spill into the sequels, which was very depressing to me, not just as an actor, but also it hurt as a person. So let me just stop right here for a second. Now, this goes beyond, being crazy when it comes to Lucasfilm, is that they did not even allow Mark Hamill to talk about George Lucas's work on set, because they believed that that was going to give the cast, bad ideas about contrasting things between Disney's Star Wars and George Lucas's Star Wars and what George would have done. So basically, Mark Hamill was a very talkative guy on set. He was always talking about stories about George, and Mark Hamill would always bring up on, what he would rather do differently for Episodes 8 and 9 and how George would have done it. Basically, Lucasfilm restricted Mark from even talking like that to the cast and the crew about George Lucas, period. So not only at the time did Lucas restrict George Lucas from the sets of those movies, but also they restricted Mark Hamill or anybody else talking about him on set. And that just goes to show you how much they really seem to actually have an issue, or at least Kathleen Kennedy's leadership and the Lucasfilm creatives that followed her had an issue with George Lucas for whatever reason. Now, obviously, when you look at everything that happened with Episode 9, George, yes, was involved temporarily for like 3 months, advising and looking over a number of scenes, instructing J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio what to do, and all the scenes that he actually advised on set were deleted by Kathleen Kennedy and completely removed. And that just goes to show you, and further, kind of proves Mark Hamill's point, that Lucasfilm just wants nothing to do with George. They never wanted anything to do with George, or should I say, Disney's version of Lucasfilm at the time. And now, thankfully, it's a different experience because Jon and Dave are changing the working environment. They're changing the atmosphere over at Lucasfilm, how it operates, how it respects Star Wars. All of that is changing for the better. So I think that we all have to give Jon and Dave a lot of credit for that. But on to the next big thing here. Mark Hamill goes on to elaborate things further to kind of make things sink in better. So he goes on to state, I know George, and he is a very simple human being. He loves his movies and felt that Disney wasn't doing anything right at the time. Of course, at the time, I couldn't really say a thing and everything that was bothering me, but it was true. He would often tell me that their direction is just not what was promised to him when he gave the keys to Kathy and let Bobby take control. Let me just stop right here for a second. I like how Mark Hamill is calling Bob Iger Bobby, but that's just something that kind of crossed my mind for a second. But the thing about Mark Hamill is that you could see it in his eyes all the time in those interviews for The Last Jedi that, yeah, he was really soul-crushed by what they were doing to the character of Luke, how they were handling the PR, the interviews of that movie. He looked so forced to say things that he did not want to say. But anyways, he goes on to conclude, so it was quite an emotional time even for me, who had to keep everything bottled in and not say anything much about George. Even when I tried to bring it up, I got into a little bit of trouble doing that on social media, and I was told to actually take certain things down. So that's a whole new level of, I think, being very low as a company like Lucasfilm, is that, okay, you don't want George on set, number one. You don't want George being talked about on set, number two. But on top of that, they didn't even want their cast, like Mark Hamill, to talk about George on Twitter, about what he would have rather done on the sequels. And that just goes to show you how afraid they really were at the time about fans seeing the contrast of what could have been and what was happening. And basically, Mark Hamill did actually spill the beans a couple of months ago that what George would have done for Episode 9 was he would have saved Luke's death until the very end of the sequels instead of the middle film of the trilogy. I mean, that was one of the big ones there, is that George does not like how Luke's death was handled and where or when it actually took place, basically. In George's original sequel treatments, by the way, Luke does die, but he does not die until the last final film, being, of course, Episode 9, leaving Leia alive to be the new Jedi. That was George's idea. So, anyways, the thing about all of this that really bothers not only me, but I believe a lot of others out there, is that they just did not respect George Lucas, somebody that gave Kathleen Kennedy a golden ticket to have all of these different titles to be released. And let's just face it, it gave Kathleen Kennedy tons of money. It really did. So that's all it was really about. It seems when it came to Kathy, it was all about, pushing her own narrative. But guys, fill me in below in the comments what you guys have to say about all of this. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.